Hi everybody, and we're here with James and Mark, and after the Rugby World Cup, bit of a lull, but there's some interesting things to talk about, I think, with rugby. There's a British Lions tour, there's who's going to be coaching the Springboks, and there's also the matter of the All Blacks coach, who's going to be coaching them. And I think we all have our own opinions, but let me ask you guys, who you think should be... Let's chat about the schedule of the Lions. And of course, it doesn't matter what schedule was, there's always going to be somebody complaining. And of course there is. So talk us through the complaints, talk us what you think about the schedule of the games and why it was done that way, Mark.
Yeah, I think an 8-match tour. Initially everyone's saying, why is it not 12, why is it not 10? The schedules just don't allow for it. If you look at the Premiership final, is a week before the Lions start their tour. The Pro 14 final's been taken back another week, and the Premiership has said they just can't accommodate shifting it back. So there is a time factor thing. I think they've got it spot on in terms of the way they've structured it. Warren Gatland has said it's one of the best tour itineraries he's seen. It gives the Lions a fair chance. They start down at the coast and they work their way up to altitude for the Test series. And I also like the way they've done it. It's a departure from old traditional Lions tours, so the traditionalists obviously are not comfortable. But from a commercial reality point of view, they've got the 3 Saturday games and 2 midweek games against 3 of the 4 Super Rugby franchises, and then 2 invitational sides, an SAA side, and then a President's 15. And then they basically go into a 3-test series, three successive Saturdays. That doesn't have the extra burden of travel for a midweek team. The test venues, some people, why hasn't Durban got a test match? They haven't filled the stadium for how long? So you've got the FNB Stadium, which takes 88,000. That will kick off the tour, the test series. It's a no-brainer. Cape Town Stadium was a no-brainer. And the spiritual home of South African rugby, Ellis Park, has to be included. And I think that was the trade-off, with the Lions being the only Super Rugby team not to get a fixture against the Lions. It was they'd rather take the test match. And I think it's going to be an intense 6-7 weeks of rugby in this country. Outside of the World Cup, they're the biggest thing. The British and the Irish Lions. James has played against them. He's been he was part of the 97 series. As Rassie said, there's guys who have played in 3 World Cups, won a World Cup medal, but never played against the Lions. So 30,000 travelling fans expected from the UK. And I looked at SA Rugby magazine's coverage of the announcement yesterday, the kind of traffic that there was, the interest that there is, and some of those motivational videos that are coming out of the UK, Lawrence Dallaglio, Brian O'Driscoll, Ian McGeechan, saying it's the greatest tour to come on of all the rugby tours of the Lions. South Africa is
the only tour left, isn't it?
But they tour Australia and New Zealand, and there's talk they may still include Argentina at a later stage, because they did play them many, many years back. But they say from a tourist perspective, as much as the rugby, there is not a better place to come to than South Africa. Lawrence Dallaglio said it's his biggest touring highlight of his career was 97 being here with the Lions.
Yeah. And
so Bloemfontein doesn't have a test. That's the big thing. People say, oh, why no Bloem? Because no one goes to watch there, and it just makes no commercial reality. So there may be a chance that the Springboks will play a warm-up game test at one of the venues that doesn't have it, but I think they've covered their bases. And their key there is to make this thing successful is every stadium's got to be sold out, 8 matches, and South African Rugby Union, the Lions, walk away the richer in the game. That money can be reinvested into the local game.
Yeah, well, I think, the British and Irish Lions, it's factual. It's massive. What's even to make it even more massive is that, at one stage you had Wales, who were world number 1, you had Ireland, who were world number 1, and you had a very dominant, at one stage, England in the World Cup, who a lot of people thought would beat South Africa. Now you've got the combination of all these countries and these players having a second dip at the world champions. So, that in itself is absolutely massive. I love the format of how they've structured the tour in terms of them even playing against our Super Rugby franchises. That for me is amazing. And then as well the presidential selection that's going to, the team that's going to be put together out of players that come from PE East London, and that I think that's just so signature and also landmark again to show the transformation and the talent pool that actually comes out of those areas.
Well, James, you played against the Lions. Tell us what that was like, or what sort of a privilege or honor it was.
Kevin, it's massive. You know, anybody that's seen behind the scenes video footage of the Lions and them on tour and that camaraderie, it's absolutely amazing. You know, you've got these guys who are fierce rivals in a Six Nations competition, playing against each other on test level, that they come together so quickly and cohesively and stand as one, almost like a nation. They actually stand as a nation. And it is the highlight. I mean, obviously, we've spoken about playing against the All Blacks, facing the Haka. That on its own is signature. But then playing the British and Irish Lions, like Mark said, very few guys get that opportunity to play against, you know, the best across the British Isles.
And then you take a guy like Warren Gatland. He's took the team to Australia 2013, won the series. Took them to New Zealand 2017, drew the series. Was here as an assistant in 2009, where they lost 2-1. And this will be his final swan song in terms of Northern Hemisphere rugby, coaching them here in 2021. And the Chiefs have given him a year off to come here and coach. And he'll have the advantage of being in charge of the Chiefs in 2020. So he'll have a good insight into South African rugby. I think they've got their continuity spot on by keeping him in charge for this tour. And it's going to be one hell of a series. I mean, their rugby is so strong at the moment. We're at the top of our game. It's go out and get your ticket tomorrow if you could. I think the ballot only opens on April in terms of the pricing of the tickets. I do know you've invested in several suites for the test matches and for the Stormers match, so a lot of your clients are going to be happy.
So at least we've got a seat.
Yeah, we've got a seat somewhere there. Eh? Security. So yeah, I'm hell of excited. I mean,
it's an interesting thing you touched on, and which is significant, is the continuation by having Gatland at the helm. You know, in terms of his success for the last decade with the Welsh, and obviously I think that there will be a big constituent of Welsh players in that touring party, along with obviously an abundance of English. I don't know how many Irishmen will be there, but yeah, the continuation factor is really significant in terms of his style of play and being familiar with the Northern Hemisphere players.
And then also, I mean, there's the chance of another tattoo for you. If the Boks don't win, I could see you walking around with that Lions crest. Finally have Scotland the Brave and the thistle.
Soon Kev's going to be chopped to the helm.
I think two's enough for me. Yeah. So, okay, then the next point raised the next interesting point. Rassie's not going to be the coach, but he's going to be very much involved with rugby. Who is going to be the coach?
My understanding is it's going to be Jacques Nienaber, who's the defensive specialist and has been Rassie's go-to guy from when Rassie started coaching professional rugby. Yeah. When he was at the Stormers, Nienaber was there. When he was at Munster, he was there, and he brought him back with the Springboks. And one of the interesting things is wherever he's gone, he's improved the defence so much more. Where the Boks were conceding 27 points a test match, they were conceding 11 in the last 18 months. The Stormers conceded the least tries in Super Rugby when they got to the final. So they could also play attacking rugby under him as well. Rassie's still going to have absolute control. It's going to be that soccer manager kind of role with a specialist coach. And that's how they're going to keep that continuity going. And you'll find, I think Rassie will just step up his game closer to the Lions series, get a bit more involved. But a lot of people are saying, why not an outside coach? Why fix something that's not broken? And I think that continuity, they'll start bringing coaches into the coaching structure. So if it's a Dion Davis or someone else, get them familiar. And through that, the succession plan will come. But I think they've got it spot on, more so than New Zealand. And for the first time in a long time, we seem to be the ones getting it right, and they're the ones getting it a bit wrong.
Well, yeah, let's talk about them. And they've got the choice between Foster and Robinson. Now, to me, Robinson is the obvious choice because he's young, he's successful, his accomplishments have been unbelievable. And then for Foster to be even considered, to me, is a bit strange. And I would love Foster to be chosen because it would probably mean a pretty average All Black coaching staff. And so we may have a golden period again against the All Blacks, and they may be a normal side.
Well, I think, I mean, like Mark pointed out on the statistics, which is, things people need to be mindful of and consider. Robinson's got an 85% win record as a coach. Foster's got, Mark, what did you say? 53. It's day and night between the two. But what is reassuring for me, it's the first time in a decade that South Africa are not scrambling to look who's going to be the next coach and having coaching issues. And it's the first time in probably 50 years that the All Blacks are almost doubting who's the best man for the job. And that's going to be critical in their transition. Obviously not being successful at securing a third in a row World Cup final. So this is going to be testing times for them, because if they get it wrong under Foster, you've got to realize that they will probably he'll have a quick exit strategy, and then there'll be another person coming in. So it's that continual readjustment, realignment of coaches and players. So this period could be critical for whether New Zealand rugby will rise again, or maybe suffer for the next four or 5 years.
It's very interesting though with the Robinson factor is that they seem fearful of a young guy.
Yeah, why is it? Because to me, it should be a slam dunk. Robinson, charismatic, he identifies with the players, he's a leader, a success. He should be a shoo-in. What is the resistance for picking him?
Yeah, I think it goes with the leadership within the New Zealand Rugby administration, this whole traditionalist view. What was fascinating was that they announced, their chairman announced 26 candidates were approached. Now, surely you know who the top 3 is. It's like, I seek you out. I don't seek out 26 blokes to put in a CV. Sure. And then you have Gatland, who said it's not reasonable. He's coaching the Lions, so he's out the mix. At a later stage, potentially because he's committed to New Zealand Rugby next year and post the Lions. Jamie Joseph and Tony Brown said, we want to continue with Japan. We're not going to be part of this process because there's no guarantee. Joe Smith said he's not available at the moment. He needs to assess where he's going. You had all these, Dave Rennie has gone to Australia. And there was big talk that he said he was approached too late. They were convinced they were going to win the World Cup, and the succession plan would have been Foster in. Now, the continuity plan has a tick because it was the right personnel, Henry into Hansen. But Foster's not necessarily the right guy. So they're sticking with this continuity, but it should only be when you've got the right personnel. You've got a bloke who took the New Zealand under-20s. They hadn't won for 5 years. Robinson, he won with them. Then he took over the NPC side. He won 3 in a row. He took over and he lost the fourth final. He lost the fourth one in the semi. And he took over the Crusaders, who under Todd Blackadder hadn't won for 7 years. 3 finals, 3 wins, first team to ever come to Africa and win at Ellis Park. So for me, it could be to them what Rassie was to us.
And he's a hell of a breakdancer.
Hell of a breakdancer, great surfer, and just all around nice guy.
And considering the reality, guys, is that the dominant presence in all the successful All Black teams come out of the Crusaders. Yeah. So it's almost like it's hand in glove. But it's interesting that they've always had their coaches have been a lot senior in age.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, like you say, they're fearful of a younger generation coach, which for me is good for us and good for world rugby in them having some vulnerabilities now. In all reality, it was getting a bit like watching paint dry, seeing the dominance of All Black rugby over the last decade.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing there is for Super Rugby. Now they're talking about, we always used to have the problem, our national coach never got on with our Super Rugby coaches. Now, in the last year, apparently that relationship between Hansen and the Super Rugby coaches was awful. So they've said, well, they want to see your coaching teams. Tony Brown turned them all down. He said, I'm staying with Jamie Joseph. John Plumtree, the Hurricanes coach, has aligned himself with Foster, because it's a forward and back specialist. And Jason Holland, the backs specialist at the Hurricanes, has aligned himself with Robertson. So whoever doesn't get the job, they've got to coach together now for the rest of Super Rugby. So it's good stuff in New Zealand at the moment, and it's good for us.
But messy, if you ask me. And then, I mean, we're talking about coaching. To come back to the neo-orbit thing with Rassie, I mean, that's also just ingenious. I mean, you see how important continuity is, and we saw that at one stage when Rassie was director of rugby for the Stormers and Western Province, when with Alistair Coetzee came in and totally went against the grain and undid everything that Rassie tried to achieve and accomplish, and it cost the Stormers and Western Province rugby, where where they simply were non-performers. So that continuity for me is vital, because the core of the players, I do believe, will remain there. They've got a coach that's come in under Rassie, who's obviously they would have boatloads of respect for through having won the World Cup, and obviously respect him for what he's put into place. So it's a winning formula.
And it's nice to see the world number one team, the Springboks, actually leading the way off the field and in their thinking. And that's how far we've come in the last 2 years.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Well, yes, it's great to be. When I look at how we finished a couple last year and the year before. Well, last year wasn't too bad, but the year before was terrible. You know,
Well, getting to being world number 8 was awful. I mean, that was probably the worst number I've had to swallow in a long time.
Yeah, no, 8's not a palatable.
No, not at all, not at all.
So much to celebrate this year going into the new year.
Certainly.
I think our next show is going to be looking at some of the better rugby sporting moments and
Top 20 highlights of the year.
yeah.
There we go.
And hopefully I'll have 2 after this weekend when Joshua goes down again.
Okay, well, let's touch on that. Ruiz. Everybody's thinking that Johnson's going to clubber this guy. And it's like, how?
Yeah.
I mean, he was knocked down 5 times, I believe, in the last fight.
Remember, Ruiz had weight on his side, and when you're that heavy, then you really do hit hard. So I think this could be an upset. I'm putting my money on Joshua.
Well, I'll take
If not by knockout, I'd say by points, because I don't think Ruiz, for many reasons, has the ability to go the distance.
Well, I don't know, he's on his Mars bars.
Well, lady, Mars bars and candy floss, and we
Prime
can do
athlete.
whatever we want. But yeah, it's nice to have heavyweight boxing back where it belongs. I mean, at one stage, heavyweight boxing was like.
Well, the Klitschko's were like the All Blacks.
Yeah.
You just knew what was going to happen.
Okay, so who are you picking on Saturday?
Joshua.
Joshua.
Yeah,
knockout,
certainly.
Points. I mean, what?
No, well,
Got to put it on the line.
look, I don't think he'll knock Ruiz out. Okay, but I think it'll go the distance and on points.
I think Ruiz is going to knock him out within 6 rounds.
Bang bang! I shot him down. Bang.
I agree. That's where I'm looking for as well.
He didn't knock him out last time, he beat him up. He's going to do it again.
He biatch slapped him.
Well, you see, that's what's nice. That's why my name is James, and you're Mark, and you're Kevin. We all have a difference of opinion.
We do. And guys, thanks for coming in. Not much, obviously we were just touching on a few things, but exciting times ahead. It'll be interesting to see. Hopefully the All Blacks make the wrong decision, which they look like they're going to. And we all agree that it's going to be Nienaber for the Springbok coach. But why was Davids being touted then?
I think Rassie quite rates him in terms of a skill set that he wants to bring him into the mix, and kind of I know that he's always, when he coached the Kings in Super Rugby, he was very impressed with what he saw. He's only won 3 out of 42 with the Kings in Pro 14, but he's played with club players every week. So I know Rassie does think he brings a certain skill set to the bigger team. So I think you'll see him integrated, and you'll see a Nienaber promoted.
Yeah. And the Northern Hemisphere, Cheetahs and the Kings playing in the Pro 14. How's that going?
Well, the Kings won for the first time a couple of weeks ago.
Against the Ospreys.
And unbelievable, eh? And the Cheetahs got a win against Neath. They've dropped a few games.
Neath?
No, against, who did they play on the...
Connacht?
No, they won, I think it was Neath, eh?
Oh, Cardiff maybe.
Well, they won last week away
Yeah.
from home, 18-30, and it was in one of those Welsh
Oh
little...
no, it was the Ospreys again.
It was the Ospreys, yes.
Yes.
The
Everybody
Ospreys.
beats the Ospreys.
Okay. Your mate Scott Gibbs won't be happy about that.
No.
But the Ospreys have also bought Mike Ruddock in for an emergency call. He said 12 years ago he got an emergency call to come fix things, and he's got it again from the same guy.
Yeah.
But he doesn't think he's going to stay more than a month. But yeah, so the Cheetahs are back home for a few games. I think they're looking good for a top 4 finish, which will take them into the playoffs. But they're still not a good enough side to kind of win that tournament. But amazing to see Ruan Pienaar, 38, still brilliant. Eh? And a bit like him and Skalk Brits, and someone said with Skalk Brits, why is he retiring after his match against Wales? Some of the skills that he showed. So
You know what I say, don't overstay your welcome.
But
That's what I say.
yeah, but you went about 3 years too early. You shouldn't leave
No,
too early
geez,
either.
I stopped at 30. I went up 6 years too early.
So yeah, so I think Cheetah's going all right, but they're not going to be Pro 40 winners.
Do you? I mean, just touching on the Kings and the Cheetahs. Do you? I mean, obviously, yes, playing at that level and touring, gaining that experience, yes, is invaluable and improves the quality of the rugby. But do you think we have enough quality of players in those two franchises to actually make them competitive in the competition? I mean, you can't carry on just being whipping boys every weekend.
Look, I think it's a way of trying to keep players in South Africa if they know they're playing in those competitions. I know the bigger plan is to get, when they expand Pro 14 to Pro 18, to get 2 other franchises, the Pumas and I think Griquas, into those competitions. So you got 4 in the Northern Hemisphere and you got 4 in the Southern Hemisphere. But they're trying to keep players here and saying, if you're still playing in Europe, you can actually get your contract by way of the Cheetahs or by way of the Kings to go into one of those teams. And I think that the Kings are the whipping boys, but there's enough good coming out of the Cheetahs that we can put a competitive team out there.
Yeah, interesting, because my view also on the super competition is that I just think there are too many teams playing in that competition, and I think the talent, the pool of talent is too spread over too many franchises, and the quality of rugby has lost its interest in that format.
Well, SA Rugby does a team of the week in Europe, and a match 23. You look at that; it's a bloody good Super Rugby franchise. So it's not so much at a national level where our game's been affected, New Zealand as well. It's at that regional level, because you could pick 2 or 3 South African sides over there that would be very effective in Super Rugby. Probably pick 5 New Zealand sides. So that's where it's hurt our game. But I think the move to the Northern Hemisphere also gives us a play in both hemispheres and makes us a global player moving beyond 2030.
And where's Jake White now?
Well,
And he's probably under a rock somewhere, Heidi.
Well, there's no team that he can apply for a job for at the moment.
Yeah.
So no, he seems to have fallen off the radar because there is another World Cup winning coach in South Africa, younger than him, and as people say, a lot more likable.
Yeah. Yeah, much more likable. Well, thanks guys for coming in, and look forward to the next show, and hopefully we get back to some rugby, the Super Rugby competition kicking off on the 31st of January.
Yeah, and the 19th of January, the Superheroes Day, up in Gauteng. It's also going to be a great occasion.
Are you coming with your cape?
I always wear a cape, huh?
No, thank you. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, sir.